Hi, everybody, and welcome to the launch of Worlds in Which, Speculative Mix, edited by Fargo Nissim Tbakhi. My name is Rochelle Tormino, and I'm the editor-in-chief of Peach Mag. I'm joined tonight by my managing editor, Jacob Meyer. Thanks so much for joining us tonight as we welcome our newest print project into the world. Worlds in Which is the first installment of Mixes, our new anthology series that has been in the pipeline for years. Like our former yearbook series, Mixes republishes work that originally appeared in our online journal. But unlike our yearbook series, the themes and tables of contents are curated by guest editors. I'm so excited to see this project finally come to fruition, and I'm so grateful to Fargo for his enthusiasm and creativity in helping us get it off the ground. He truly set the bar. Thank you, Fargo. Before I pass the mic, I just want to mention a few house rules. Please keep yourself muted. If you unmute, you'll get muted. That being said, you're welcome to turn your video either on or off, but as a heads up, tonight's reading will be recorded and shared on YouTube and Instagram. And finally, we encourage you to light up the chat, but we reserve the right to bounce you if we find any of your comments hateful or mean. And now I'm happy to introduce our host for this evening, the editor of Worlds in Which, Fargo Nissim Tbakhi. Fargo is a queer Palestinian American performance artist and writer. He is the winner of the Ghassan Kanafani Resistance Art Prize, a pushcart prize, and Best of the Net nominee, and he is a tourist. Welcome, Fargo, and thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. I'm so excited to see everyone here. And I'm so excited for this delightfully small little book. It's truly like so cute. It's like aggressively cute, which is, I think, a really wonderful and underappreciated aesthetic in books. Things should be cuter more often. This has been such a joy of a project to work on. It's been just really exciting also to just go back into the archives and see like how much incredible work Peach has published over the last several years. There's so much of it. It was really, really exciting to arrive at the idea of doing a speculative mix. Especially because in fiction, I think the speculative is a little bit more understood, and it's a little bit more, it's used more often as a descriptor or a mark of genre. But in things like poetry especially, but even sometimes visual art, it's a little slipperier. So it's really enjoyable to work with other folks at Peach to wonder what that could mean in the context of poetry. And to sort of maybe illuminate that a little further, I thought I would read just a few chunks from my editor's note for the mix. And then we're just going to jump into hearing some of the incredible work that is in this aggressively cute book, some of which is aggressively cute and some of it is not. So a few notes on the speculative. The speculative worlds are real worlds. With our breath and our words, they make themselves known to us. Inside the speculative gesture, the gesture of words to a world which exists alongside, beyond, apart from, within the world we have been told is real, language is a spell. Language is not only the words, but the ways the words dance. Language is also the stories we tell about, between, beneath, around the words. The speculative is most of all a way of reading. What worlds does this language reveal to me which I did not already dance toward? This reading exists alongside or occasionally in spite of an author's intent. Thus, it requires great care and great responsibility. The speculative exists beyond the marketing tool of genre. When the wronged write into the truth of their world and it does not fit the colonial boundaries of language and story, publishers call it speculative, though it is real as dirt. We must be careful and read with wide and tender gaze. The speculative is Bugs Bunny drawing a door on a wall and walking through. It is the door, the wall, and the passing through. The speculative exists as an incantation of the past, the present, the future, of alternative pasts, presents, futures, or modes of existence beyond linear time. A story may exist through mishmish. I believe in a speculative gesture as a way to make a place to stand, to look around, to dig up or bury the things we know. Somewhere a spider is weaving a kind of text that remembers the world for us. It is offering us a world to find. The pieces in this mix are webs which offer me worlds. They dance and breathe like sea monsters. They are monstrous and wonderful, tender and revelatory. They are doors on walls. Yalla, toward a better world. And to help us start moving towards that better world, it is my deep joy to start introducing our incredible featured readers tonight. You should definitely get a copy of this so you can read their work and the work of those who couldn't make it to join us tonight. It's just wonderful. So our first reader is going to be antmen Pimentel Mendoza, who is a writer based in Richmond. Her poetry is published in Cosmonauts Avenue, Underblong, and Lantern Review. His favorite donut is a maple old-fashioned. Antmen is online as Antmen is Magic. So please welcome antmen Pimentel Mendoza.
Hi everyone. Thank you, Fargo. Thank you, Peach, for having me. Thanks, Yalda, for joining tonight. I'm going to read a couple of poems. I'm going to start with one that is kind of about Amy Adams' character in the movie Arrival, and it's called Dr. Louise Banks Inquires After the Child. Love is time travel, geometries of a whole, shrinking, pulsing. I love you. As I reach into the past, you heal me, not really. Always threshold, always ending, always shirking, as dreamt. Our shape in our youth's skies, a star shot. A pulsing love in you reaches past your dug-in heel, not the end beginning of my life, ringing through every minute as dreamt. Our shape in your youth's skies, a star shot, through with speculations on a future time, passing within it, the end of the beginning, life ringing around every minute as time travel, geometry of a loop, one endlessness happening through our speculations on future rhyme, passing within it. Might the loop be a jump? Me to you and you to me, slackening as we travel the geometry of a loop, one endless happening, ringed about the grass, growing millimeters a moment. Ringed, might a loop be a leap? Me to you and you to me, slackening. Yes, I am choosing this impossible bigness, all thorax winged and ringed about the grass, growing millimeters a moment. Ringed without end around your cock, knotted by night, a closed weaving yes, I am. Choosing an impossible bigness, all thorax winged, and hugging your irises, the rises, the ruses, dearth, rebirth, cleaving without end around your cock, knotted by night, a closed weaving, real and always, threshold, always ending, always shirking, hugging your irises, the rises, the ruses, dearth, rebirth, cleaving love, time traveled through geometries of holes, shrinking. And I'm going to now read one that quotes an interview with Sophia Dolan about her latest collection. She says in this interview in Bond magazine, she says a sentence, "Here is the erotic grass where you are not." And I quote that in this poem because that really moved me. So here is a poem called "Here in the Un-American Grasses." Here in the silk of un-American grasses, if un-American might mean resistant to commodification rather than Asiatic, the figure reclines. Braided, corded, dough-like flesh open at the underarm feast. Here in the fibrous bed of neon pink, hot to the touch and a marvel of honeyed fumes, the figure reclines, legs expectant and alighting, musing on here. Here is the erotic grass where you are not. Here the odalisque torso thrusts into theological weights and hungers for the sweet sop of the wealthy man's fantasy. Here in the grasses, the hot tub, where the figure drinks pink margarita mix from a plastic cup. He presses the field of his back to the orchard. The figure shifts of widths and weights and hungers for the novelist hood to enmesh a naive instance of more body. Here in the silky grasses, the figure opens the app between labors for an invitation outside of time. Here, unreasoned, the grasses taste like the errant nail's head in the basement bathroom wall, lusting to infect the inked porcelain, the porcine slinger of pies, rubber, and amyl. The figure, remembering the bouquets, arranges himself into a present. The figure shifts widths and weights and hungers for the engineer's window. of time, an imperative welcome. He says, strip at the door. He says, begin at the soles. The figure kicks in the grass back into beat with the compassed host ego, keystroking to engorge and encourage. The kicks betray the storm in his hips, coming into the careful eye of the studied hands, the uncanny grip strength. In these grasses, the figure knows you are not. How much can I afford? A scorched field, an agora mapped in the notes on my phone. And I'm going to end with the poem that is in Worlds in Which, and it is the first and so far only poem I wrote about a milk commercial, but who knows? So this is called The Gay Dads in the Milk Ad that tells me to love what's real, consider a gay divorce. 1, I am not saying I regret having the kid. I would never say that. What I mean to say is anything true, or funny at least. Love to love you, brown eyes. On a Sunday morning with maple syrup, a beaten egg, a loose batter. Later that night, we send Willow up to brush her teeth. We read her Ferdinand again. We don't teach her bad words, civil war or oxymoron or casualty. Watching CNN, you ask me, how long does a volcano have to be dormant before it's dead? An hour later, I read Isherwood in bed again. When you snake in from the 2-car garage, swallow me in a kiss with your bong ripped open wide whale shark mouth. What I mean to say is, I do miss a bare night at Steamworks, and I regret that on most days. 2, after we watch a Netflix doc on the meat and dairy industry, I pick up soy milk from the Whole Foods, but Willow doesn't like the filmy way it goes down. Milk Mustachio Tony Hawk and Milk Mustachio Britney Spears on gender-appropriate posters in the halls leading to gym class locker rooms and the food pyramid are totally corporate scams. Can you believe that? I saw a headline that claims California is in shambles because of the demand for almond milk, but the sugar in oat milk hurts my tummy. On Recon, I told you I was a sub because I keep such tight coil control in my waking hours that the prospect of slumber fading into you throat first was a liberation. There was no molasses or preserve as sweet as the release it is to be nothing before you enter me, until I sheath you. Then you took me on our first date, then another. And that's my work. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you. That's so wonderful. And you know, reading Edmund's poem that was published in Peach was also really like, it felt to me like a really wonderful clarifying moment, because it made me think of how many poems make that move of taking a piece of culture and writing further into it, which also felt like a really a speculative move, right? A speculative gesture to wonder about the lives of others, which can be such a generous act. And I think it is in all of the poems you just read. I'm deeply obsessed with the Amy Adams poem. Not the Amy Adams poem, the Amy Adams character poem. There's all sorts of layers going on here. Our next reader is Dana Blatte, who is a high school junior from Massachusetts. Her work is published in Fractured Lit, Rusted Moth, and elsewhere, and has been recognized by the Pulitzer Center, the New York Times, and the National Young Arts Foundation. Besides writing, she loves digital illustration, bedroom pop, and honey almond butter, which sounds delicious. Find her on Twitter at Inflorescence. So please welcome Dana.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dana, and I'll be reading 2 poems tonight. The first one is, of course, forthcoming in this mix. So thank you so much to Peach and Fargo for selecting it. This is We Control the Tide after Christina M. And in another life, I turn moon gold and go paper when it storms. In another life, I tongue the sky and deposit no rain. In another life, my echo is a moth, less of a sun with no lighthouse. In another life, your cavity bears no promises, no organs waiting to be unskinned. In another life, you are still weeping a knife, and I swallowing its hilt. In another life, the moths lantern my graveyard, while the water ungods us by its breath. They call that remembrance. In another life, we are slipping in and out of worlds, post-celestial paper trails. In another life, I am the lighthouse, and your echo warbles into mine. In another life, I am carving the blade, and you are still papering the sky. And the second poem I will be reading tonight is called Premonition with Extras, which can be found in issue 9 of The Shore. I never liked mirrors because of the lies they told. How a good girl can be a bird, thin-boned, lace-necked. In the script, she is always silent, waiting to be filled. If my life were a movie, I would be the dead girl in the alley. You would forget my face before you saw it. I never wanted to be famous, just known. The way a leaf can love the wind without ever knowing its name. Everything repeats, rewinds, the movie, my smile opening in reverse. Do you remember me? You and I met in this alley under the sheet of rain that hissed into the air like smoke. Like each tear was softening us into something new. I cried for you, because I saw you in a mirror. You practiced your mouth, leaning into the telephone, brushing toward an ear, slipping through a quiet collar. The buildings darkened, windows flashed with noise. This is where the story goes wrong. Every time I tell it, it changes. It works like that, you know. I held it in my palm until a girl could find her voice. I wonder if this repeats. The bird, the rain, the city of split throats. Listen, maybe you knew me. Maybe I was famous somewhere. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dana. Yeah, I really love that poem, We Control the Tide. And I also feel like the repeated refrain in there of "and in another life" could also be an alternate title for this mix. Because it just feels like that too is such a deep-rooted desire of whatever speculative is just, I don't know, that deepness that we all feel of "and in another life." So I'm so glad that is also floating through the air in the spell that we are weaving tonight. Our next reader is Kyla Jamieson, who is a disabled poet who lives and relies on the unceded traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations in the city currently known as Vancouver. She's the author of the poetry collection Body Count. Her work reimagines time, embodiment, care, and intimacy in the aftermath of a brain injury. Find her at kylajamieson.com or on a rock next to a river. Welcome, Kyla.
Hi, thank you so much. Thank you to all the readers and to Rachel and Fargo and everyone from Peach for organizing this. I actually got it in the mail like yesterday. So I'm gonna read my poem that's in the mix, from the mix first. It's called "I Am So Excited About the Future Since My Only Limits Are Imagined." There is artificial grass here, but that's not what I've been smoking. Like all great millennial visionaries, I am caving under the weight of my ambitions. My grandma says life is a gimmick. I Google virgin whore dichotomy plus intellectual. How to define evil without capitalism? What even is normal? How valuable optometrists will be during the apocalypse, I am not ready for. The unending applause at that one point in Trump's address to Congress was gruesome. When will I see you again? Thanks. I was going to mention something. I'm organizing a reading series called Rest Days that stars all disabled and chronically ill poets. And we have like a super gentle launch event happening this Sunday. Nobody's reading poetry. We're just introducing ourselves and sharing about our lineages. But if anyone's interested, that is happening. And I also had an access doc that I totally forgot to put in the chat. So I just did that. So in the chat, if anyone wants to read along my next two poems, the text is in there. Sorry about that. So yeah, I'm gonna read two more short poems. The first one is called "Pain is a Sentient Entity," and it opens with a quote by the late Tiva Harrison, who died of cancer, I think a year or two ago, and it's from her poetry collection. And the quote is, "No, you wouldn't know by looking, as if looking is knowing." which is just a quote that I am obsessed with. So pain is a sentient entity. Pain watches my body from another planet, transmits dialogue as radio signals, plays my body like a marionette everyone believes is actually me. Look, she's kissing her partner. Look, she's washing the dishes after dinner. Whatever it looks like I'm doing, no, I'm doing something else. No, pain is my most intimate relation, the one I'm always dancing with. Even when it looks like I'm on earth, holding my own hand or moving my fingers across the keyboard to write a poem about pain like I know anything about it, like pain would allow itself to be known in language, like the vessel would be permitted to perceive the mechanism of control. Thanks for the snaps. Yeah, I wrote that poem when I was writing a lot and a lot of pain. The next poem and the last poem I'll read is called The Body Says Hello. I'm just gonna take a breath if anyone wants to join me. Yeah, I feel like we always need some intermissions. Okay, The Body Says Hello. I wish I could ask Instagram who borrowed my copy of Leave Your Body Behind, and whoever I lent it to would give it back. But nobody I knew before I stopped reading still watches my stories. I stopped writing sentences and editing and being useful to the literary scene. I stopped being productive in the ways society defines it. I did not stop being beautiful. In fact, I became more beautiful than ever in a way selfies can't capture. My current projects include remembering to feed myself lunch before 5 p.m. and embracing rest with my body, not just my intellect. The intellect buys a book called How to Be Idle. The intellect follows at Okay to Rest on Instagram. The body breathes, the body unfurls, the body holds the phone. The body says, hello. These words are coming from a new place now. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Kyla. Yeah, that reading series sounds so wonderful. I can't wait to check it out. I also just want to shout out also that Kyla's poem in the mix is in these like really gorgeous capital letters, all capital letters, which is one of my favorite aesthetic looks. Because it also just feels, there's such an energy that comes with it, a freedom, a kind of insistence that I just really love. So shout out to capital letters. Sometimes, most of the time. Shout out to like all capital letters for poems that really know how to use them. Our next reader is Mark Cugini, who is a bratty switch from Staten Island, New York. They're the founder of Big Lux, a co-organizer of Whale Prom, and a member of Best Buds Collective. And their chapbook, I'm Sorry If My Traumatized Life is an Inconvenience to Your Perfect Existence, will be released this summer. Please welcome Mark.
Hi, thank you, Fargo. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you, Rochelle, Peach Team, Rose Boatwin, for taking my poem in the first place. This is really like meaningful for me. I've never been anthologized before, so I feel like just super grateful. And Fargo, that it's by you. I love your work so much. So I'm just so touched. So I have on the 4th of July, I decided I was going to change the name of my chapbook to I'm going to steal a Declaration of Independence, which is something that I think it was Richard Nixon once said. And it's like the book's mostly about like queer shit and anarchism. So I'm going to read a couple poems from that. This first one I wrote in March of 2020, right around the time that Cuomo said that they were going to start using that in prisons, they were going to start using like prison labor to like make like hand sanitizer. So this is called Governor's Briefing, New York. The coffin lid covers a field, some daisies, some garbage, carcass of pigeon, some fucking flower, sheep, the governor says. The flock plucks prison soap from his hands, sanitize the prisons by not sanitizing the prisons. A mopey tourist wanders into the infirmary. Hark goes a little dead N95 mask, dripping with imperialism. Okay, that's that. The next one is pretty short. A lot of the poems in this book are like written after folk punk songs. And this one's called Love Song for Only Anarchists Are Pretty. I wrote it after Jack Terrycloth, who passed away a couple months ago. But I wrote this like well before he passed away. Yeah. A pink umbrella blooms in front of an occupied police station. A scorched riot shield falls from the sky and lands on a democratic caffeine staffer's lawn. I see you twerking towards the empty police station while our comrades cover it in piss, and it's only the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Good morning, my shimmering little guillotine. This time we will win. Say it back. That's a good girl. Now say it again. Okay, and then the last poem I'm going to read is the poem that is in the anthology. I'm gonna read the title because I'm doing pretty okay in time. It's really long. The title is "In Which the Poet Bargains with the Villains in National Treasure 2, the Book of Secrets," so that the United Daughters of the Confederacy are held accountable for forwarding white supremacy via the lost cause narrative. And as the credits roll, Nick Cage presents the poet with an enamel pin with "Boss Bitch" emblazoned across a cupcake, which in turn finally validates the poet's effort to prioritize self-love. It's written after George Abraham and Ocean Vuong and Chen Chen and Roger Reeves and Frank O'Hara. This is like my Someday I'll Love Myself poem. And there's an epigraph from SZA. Maybe I'll be perfect in a new dimension. But I won't, but is likely white noise, but is a broken clock, a burrow, a mortal corpse, a sewage-riddled pond, dead lilacs at the bottom of a sea. Mark dear, we can trace the trauma on your forearms like burnt gauze. We can pick the scabs when your breathing scampers, judge the tremors of the hollow earthquakes as the concrete convolves, but nothing will stop the shaking. Your body, an unruly ghost, the esophagus, its heterosexual graveyard, the acid in your throat, the ectoplasm that possesses you. What we mean here is that these dimly lit demons make it hard to understand the depths of your hurt. We've run miles from these monsters and they've eaten us every time. And yet has become your warship, a golden field of wheat when you can't get out of bed, anxiety and yet, depression and yet, the sound of a galloping horse, the dull curve of a bigot's fist, the dead prairie at dusk, the serrated pierce of every F word uttered in your direction, and yet is a dainty wolf, a galaxy of glittering queens with brass knuckles and dead stock black cement threes voguing on your tongue. Do you even know you're alive? Do you see how every day you transform death into brittle fuckboy, a chalky calcium cough in the back of your throat? You were born a brick of shit and yet you made a cathedral. Your scars are iridescent strobe lights, your heart a dance floor, your arms a bucket of water. This trash compactor of a life has become the most beautiful funeral we've ever seen. And thus you scale a landfill and dredge through the garbage until you find a conch-sized portal. You peel the gremlins from your shoulder and howl your penance. You fall to your knees and beg for a God that will peg you on an iceberg. When she holds you in her arms and feeds you fearless cantaloupe, whisper the only hymn you've ever known. Lord, give me the strength to know you're not there. Let me know the greatest nothing, and let me know no one is watching. Let me be the stuff of dreams, a genderless anvil, a queer river, a strong and rotten bone inside this scared whale. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you so much, Mark. Such a joy to hear that poem aloud. It's truly like one of the all-time great titles. And I heard someone on a podcast once who I truly can't remember who they were. They were Irish, so just let that inform how you hear what I'm about to say. But they said something like, we should be endlessly naive in our desires for the future and ruthless in our pursuit of them. And I think that kind of energy is something that I really like gather and find strength in your poems in particular. That we can imagine whatever the fuck we want and we can ruthlessly work to get it and make it happen. So thank you so much for that. Hell yeah, this is going so good. This is just wonderful. And I also want to just shout out Kyla's note about intermissions, which are so good. And I was thinking that something that's really good for that is when people have like cats, especially on Zoom, because they'll like wander in and everything just stops. Like no one can do anything except be like, oh my God, it's a cat. And then there's like 10 minutes where we're just talking about the cat. Look, Rochelle's doing it for us right now. There's a cat. Now we all need to just think about and imagine and learn about the cat's life. And it's a really wonderful break in the the spell weaving of these poems and writing, because it's not just poems. So thank you so much for that, Rochelle. And our next reader is Melissa Benton Barker, whose writing appears in Jellyfish Review, Longleaf Review, Lammergeier, and elsewhere. She lives in Ohio with her family. Thank you so much, and let's welcome Melissa.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here. All your words are so powerful. I'm so grateful to Rochelle and Fargo for organizing all of this. So yeah, I'm glad we all got to come together this way. I'm just going to read my piece from Worlds in Which. So I'll get right to it. This is called My Parents Grow Old Together. My father went to the hospital to have his heart taken out. It wasn't too difficult, not with a whole team of nurses and surgeons. They knew what they were doing, how to saw through a sternum, how to crank open a rib cage and remove the specimen, my father's heart dark and slick and pulsing in the surgeon's latex palm. The surgeon held the heart up to the light as if it were an offering, shining and writhing in all its darkness. My father's heart was right where it wanted to be. My father's heart did not long to go home. The surgeon brought the heart to his own chest and cradled it, whispering and comforting while the others did their suctioning. Those doctors and nurses were busy janitors, scraping and siphoning. My father had ordered up a move-out job, a kind of cleanup that had never been done before. I guess no one had ever turned my father inside out the way he did his daughters. No one had ever really tried to empty him. Under the bright light, my father breathed, heartless and magic, like a cage that is empty of an animal, and his heart took on a longing for the doctor, because no one had ever held it quite like that, so quiet, so tender. But when the heart tried to speak its longing, blood spattered and made a mess out of the situation. No one understood its language. Over the years, my father's heart had found its own way of speaking, having been so long alone, locked up inside a rib cage with no one to talk to but a pair of lungs who had always been poor conversationalists. Those lungs had grown shadowy with misuse, and besides, they had only ever really been interested in each other. That's why, mid-sentence, my father's heart was interrupted, tucked in like a fussy baby, folded into viscera, bones soldered and skin sewn up, an angry railroad track of a scar to mark the spot of escape, like a relic or a warning. My father's heart never finished a thought, but there beneath his ribs it thumps and rattles, like a Frankenstein or a prisoner. My mother says that's what he gets after a life spent making sport out of love, the way he was always looking away from his own wreckage and banding about without her. Now there he goes for the rest of his life, a job half done, an open wound. But I know it's not his fault. My father is nothing if not a gnawing, an ache never quelled from a time when he was more of a hunger than a man. If only my mother had seen my father's heart the way the surgeon did, it would have surprised her. She would have found it so much more complicated than she'd expected, the way it turned blue from black and also back to red again, the way it beat with blood despite the ways it had been beaten. My father's heart was a survivor, marbled, congealed, shellacked, encased by the life it had lived inside him. It was a risky heart, a hungry heart, some would say a bad heart, made ugly by all the damage by the damage of all it had wanted and hadn't got. But my mother wasn't there to see the heart. She stayed home. My father's heart, on the outside, was on its own. My mother's problems are different. She takes pills for her pain. Numbness is her specialty. She spent too much time on her knees all her life, and now she says there will be no more bending. You see, after all these years, my parents are still married. They share a home, dogs, rugs, and teacups. They say they're just getting warmed up. They say marriage is a real commitment. They say they'll take it to the grave. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. I really love that little story. And one of the things it makes me think of is that I think one of the reasons that I really love all kinds of language that is speculative is that other languages isn't enough sometimes. And a language of realism is not able to capture the ways that we actually experience the world, at least for me. And so I think for me, just being able to sit in the space in which a story takes its own metaphor and its own fantasy and its own desires seriously, and to take that seriously as a reader is really revelatory to me. And it helps me feel more at home in this world to also know that there are others, if that makes sense. And that's something that I really felt when I was reading that story in the archives, and just felt like so grateful to have found it. So thank you so much. Okay, we're feeling good. We're taking breaths. We're thinking about cats. I'm so deeply excited to welcome our next reader, Robin Zlotnick, who is a writer, editor, and fledgling potter who lives in New England with her husband and the most perfect dog in the world, who we are now also imagining. Perfect dogs, also excellent ways to take a breath. She has fiction published in places like X-Ray and After the Pause, humor published in McSweeney's, The Belladonna, Slackjaw, and elsewhere. And you can check out her work at robinzlotnick.com. Please welcome Robin.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? We're good? Okay, awesome. Thank you so much to Fargo and Rochelle and everyone at Peach. I'm very grateful to be here. And I'm going to read my flash story that appears in Worlds in Which. It's called Lily Monster. Before, when Lily was too small to do it on her own, but big enough to sit still, Mona often perched on her daughter's twin bed and brushed her wet hair. Lily would flop down on the floor between her mother's legs next to a glass bowl in which Mona collected, one by one, the knots she yanked out of Lily's scalp. After, Mona counted the knots, and that's how many kisses she would plant on Lily's belly. They always made the little girl giggle, even if her face was still wet with tears from the hurt. Mona never allowed herself to fan the tiny flames that peaked in her chest with each breaking hair. Now, Lily's hair, what's left of it, is matted and greasy and dirty. Mona sees the lost girl in those pale bald patches on her head. She tried to brush her hair once, but the wail that erupted from Lily's muzzled mouth was nothing like she'd ever heard, deep and human from someplace else, not a sound she ever wanted to hear again, so she gave up. Mona was crushed when she found out she was pregnant. Lily's father, not a father, a seed spiller, and that's all, had packed up and driven west weeks before for medical school. Their bond buckled quickly under the prospect of 2,000 miles of land between them. They agreed never to see or speak to each other again. A baby wasn't going to change that. Mona walked in the park one day and saw a turtle-necked Burberry blonde holding hands with a toddler whose righteous giggle shot through the air, infecting her brain. At that moment, she, rather stupidly, decided against abortion. The second Lily escaped into the world, Mona knew she had made a mistake. She thought the world had ended. But she did not give up. Mona was strong, damn it, and strong women kept going. So she packed away her real self to be opened later. She smiled, accepted gifts, sponge-painted bright yellow ducks on a nursery wall. She asked Lily about her day at school, hung up her drawings, fed her proper meals. When Lily was sad, she stroked her cheek. When Lily was proud, she clapped. When Lily got hurt, she bandaged her up. Mona was never confused about how she really felt, but she was a very convincing actress. Then the world actually ended. One morning, Lily was playing in the garden when a hand reached up and pulled her left leg under. Lily screamed, and like the good mother she was, Mona dropped what she was doing and ran to her daughter. When she yanked her up, Lily's pinky toe was gone. White bone glimmered through blood and dirt. Mona rushed inside, cleaned the wound, called 911, but she got an automated message. From the ground, unknown disease, stay inside. She stared into her daughter's big brown eyes as a robot told her the apocalypse had come. Now, when Mona looks into Lily's eyes, which have turned milky gray and dart around like flies, all she sees is her own weakness. She tried to leave once, but failed. She grabbed the fireplace poker, a fanny pack full of knives, and the leash that once belonged to Mr. Muffins. Lily had begged and begged for Mr. Muffins. Mom, please. And now she was picking his fur out of her teeth. She hooked the leash to Lily's muzzle and set out. Mona got to the end of the driveway and saw empty road in both directions. She imagined snipers whizzing bullets into Lily's head, couldn't bear the thought of sympathetic strangers bringing their hands to their hearts when they realized a grieving mother was in their midst. She turned around. Now, Mona swings on the porch, imagining lopping Lily's head off, watching it roll down the front steps into the garden. She'd be free to go. But each time she practices swinging that axe, bile bubbles in her throat. For all that's wrong with Lily Monster, Mona thinks she must be the really sick one. It's funny. Before, when her daughter was particularly devilish, Mona privately referred to her as Lily Monster. When, for example, Lily, covered in snot, threw herself on the floor because she'd been asked to put on shoes, Mona closed her eyes and slowly counted to 10. In those 10 seconds, Mona carefully extracted her real self from deep inside. She pictured herself screaming wildly in that little girl's face, shoving her to the ground, tying her to a chair. She mocked Lily Monster's cries until the girl's eyes leaked so much moisture her whole body shriveled into silence. When she got to 10, Mona neatly tucked herself away, opened her eyes. She responded appropriately, and they went to the mall or wherever. Now, when Lily Monster screams, which she does several times a day, her mother doesn't hesitate. Mona's eyes burst open, wide and wild. She anchors herself to the wicked world, heavy and full. Her head shakes, each strand of her choppy hair vibrating to its tip. Her body balloons with breath, with all the air she can gather, and she roars right back in Lily Monster's blank face, rageful and ecstatic, thunderous, feral, clear, twice, maybe 3 times. Then she throws her daughter rabbit scraps. Thank you.
Wow. Then she throws her daughter rabbit scraps is just such a killer last line. I love a zombie story. I really do. I love horror of all kinds, which is also a sort of zone of speculative that I deeply love. But I was thinking just now of does anyone know the movie World War Z, which is not very good. And there's a part in that movie where like the zombies like sort of it's like that shot from the trailer where the zombies all like climb on top of each other and there's this like huge massive zombies and they are climbing up the like security wall of the state of Israel. Like that section takes place in Israel and there's some deeply weird like politics in that section. Like by deeply weird I mean like horrible. Honestly, like those zombies should get up there. But anyway, I was thinking about that because I think what I love about Robin's story is that it is like the opposite of that spectacle, and it is instead like using the speculative gesture of a zombie story to think about like such a specific and lived in kind of intimacy, which I feel like we is not a space that like is explored with that very often. And so it was just like it felt so refreshing and wonderful to read. So that's what I'm thinking about right now. Okay, Jacob is in the chat saying that World War Z is a great movie, and there's more to that, but I'm not going to read it. So he's canceled. Let it be known. The most important thing that I can do on this in the Zoom is just start canceling people. That's my main function. Actually, what's more important is to say that our next reader tonight is Rosie Decter, who is a writer and musician based in Montreal. Her work has appeared in Vallum Contemporary Poetry, Brightwell Dark Room, and elsewhere, and she also sings backup in a Fleetwood Mac cover band, which is a deeply, deeply important fact that I would like us all to think about. And potentially, Rosie, if there are like concerts coming up, maybe we can, I don't know, I'm just going to put that out there. So please welcome Rosie.
Thank you so much. It is a deeply important fact to reflect on. If there are concerts, I'll keep you posted. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, okay, sweet. Thank you so much for having me. I'm gonna read my piece in the anthology and then also a brief poem afterwards. This story is called Sheila and Jules. I wake up with a ghost. She's already awake and mostly still knows me. She hovers and itches and watches me get dressed. We decide to skip breakfast, which means in 2 hours, I'll buy an overpriced muffin and cover my desk with crumbs. We tie and retie my laces and hold the rail as we head down my staircase. Well, as much as she can hold. The snow is big and broad this morning. I lose my footing on the last step and sink in a little. She gives me a look. I call her Sheila, which she tolerates. She bumps up against my back as I walk, urging me to speed a little. We're gonna be late. The bus is packed and I listen to a podcast about the Army McCarthy hearings and forget her for a few smooth minutes. When I look up, she's still there, translucent like syrup. Light passes through and people pass through, and she rolls her eyes at me for staring, especially since no one else is. At work, we pick articles to read. We land on one about a woman who travels to Latvia to find her birth mother. Sheila sort of bites her lip while reading, and I agree with her that the story is affecting, but the prose is too detailed. We read another about 3 women who were catfished by the same charming man. He told each of them that he had gold bars in China. He just needed a loan to fly there and get them. 5,000, 10,000, 40,000. Oof, gone like morning. I wonder if I should tell my mother about this sort of thing, and Sheila gently shakes her head. I wonder what it would feel like if she put her hand on my shoulder, but she doesn't. At lunch, I watch her not eat. Sheila frowns at the cafeteria lasagna and warm fruit salad that I pick my way through, and I tell her that she can't criticize if she's not even having any, which is a bit of a low blow. I ask what her preferred pop culture representation of ghosts is. Casper feels a bit sterile, Ghostbusters a bit offensive, I muse. What about that Casey Affleck movie? My mom hated it. Sheila laughs, and it comes out like a little gust of air blowing past my shoulder. After lunch, we do some work, putting numbers in spaces and arranging letters properly, assessing which shapes in which order will generate the highest return. We write some copy for a French startup that sells unrippable pantyhose and is trying to break into the Canadian market. Sheila and I had talked about going to France once or twice in another life to see her mom. I can't tell if having company helps the time pass faster or slower, but the time does pass. My coworker tells me about his new cat, who was getting along well with his first cat, but also broke both the salt and pepper shakers last night, so there are still kinks to be worked out. He doesn't ask about Sheila. We get into a small fight on the way home because I want to stop and get takeout and Sheila doesn't want to wait. Got places to go, I ask, which makes her eyes and mouth sink into themselves, and then I feel bad. Because she's here, obviously. Sorry, I say. I want to reach out, but what would I touch? So instead I walk into the subway, assuming she'll follow. I swipe my card and head to the platform, walking alongside a mother and 3 kids. They're each carrying bags and have just arrived from the train or the airport, maybe. The mother asks the eldest to put away his phone and drags the middle child by his mittens as he tries to run ahead. The youngest trails a few paces behind. Her hair is bunched in 2 perfect buns on either side of her head, and she's pulling a bright pink suitcase, bedazzled with jewels that spell Jules. She walks in a zigzag, and I slow down to watch her. Jules narrowly avoids walking into another commuter, and then pauses, peers ahead at her family. Once she's sure her mom isn't looking, she lifts the suitcase from the tiled floor and does a perfect twirl, holding her luggage out at arm's length in a sparkling blur. I catch her eye and smile, and she smiles back. Julia, come on, her mom calls out, and the girl takes off down the platform. The train takes 3 minutes to arrive, and when it comes, I squeeze myself in, pressed against a half-dozen bodies, unable to distinguish my own limbs from the fray. I begin to wonder, what should I cook for dinner, and what will I read tomorrow, and what would France feel like on bare skin? I stare up at the ceiling and imagine it spinning. The other poem, or the poem that I'm going to read, that was a story, is new, and it's about technology and romance, and is obviously titled Techno-Romanticism. I'm happy we met, I suggest. I was surprised at the ease of your neck, the way it bends. Bodies are so typically contingent, braced against. Good is in the stars, you insist. You mean it literally. Matter rerouted towards 7 billion simulations, a vision of wellness. I laugh at this longer than I should. You shrug it off. Beer and bread and novelty songs in the kitchen, you push and induce a nail digging, a night ending badly. A friend bursts into tears and you understand why, but leave the room anyway. I mean, come on, it was a party. I drift towards evaluation, suggest something wrong about fetishes. That's fucking stupid. Well, so is evolution. For me, stars are just metaphors, but I appreciate a material sting. The hum of data positivity, a body bracing with, willing to dig. I circle the end and you picture extensions, length and growth and good fortune. Okay, I'll bite. Let's keep getting smaller. Flame out of light. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rosie. And Imagine It Spinning is also another excellent alternative title to the mix. And also, I mean, I'm also reminded, I love a ghost. I love a ghost story. I just feel like, I don't know, I feel like people give ghosts a bad rap. I gotta say that. I need to stick up for ghosts as actual things, and also just generally as like symbols in fiction. I feel like people kind of rag on ghosts, but yeah, I'm pro ghost. I'm honestly, I feel like we should just give the world over to ghosts. Drop a ghost story in the chat if you would. If you've ever had an experience with a ghost. That could be its own, never mind. That could be its own whole event, though. It's just like, someone should curate a series of like, what is your ghost story? What's your like actual ghost story? Special Peach Magazine issue, ghosts. Real ghosts. They're not metaphors. They don't like mean anything. They just come and they like float around and they're like, so think about that, Rochelle and Jacob. Just let it simmer in your mind. And while you do that, it is a joy to welcome our next reader, Sam Price, who lives in Pennsylvania and can be found online at samwprice.wordpress.com or at sam_w_price. Welcome, Sam.
Thank you, Fargo. Thank you, Rochelle, and the rest of the Peach team as well. It's also been great to hear the rest of the readers, so thanks, everyone. I'm going to read 3 short pieces. 2016. Oh, hell yeah. My relationship started in the hottest year of recorded history. The eye of the story. Over halfway into reading a book called The Perfect Storm, I realized it was the story the turn-of-the-century George Clooney movie was based on. When I plucked the book from the library stacks, I'd briefly thought about the movie but dismissed it. It didn't have one of those too embarrassing for public transit, made into a hit movie covers. Plus, I figured there have been plenty of so-called perfect storms. Of course, I was projecting. The current state of affairs has tricked me into thinking 100-year storms always hit once a hurricane season. But the movie's over 20 years old, the book's almost 25, and with all our industry in progress, climate change years tick away quicker than dog years. Regardless of my mistake, I wasn't far off about the interchangeable shape of the story. The Perfect Storm shares a structure with most ocean disaster movies, at least the non-icebergian ones. A report comes over the radio, inclement weather is incoming. The captain mauls a course correction, but hopes the storm will turn out to be nothing but nuisance. Skies darken, the outer bands of the storm lash the wave-thrashed deck. Conditions go from gnarly to unbearable. Not only is the captain unable to pilot the ships to its destination with a mere delay, they won't arrive at all unless they turn into the storm. Such a violent sea must be dealt with directly, or the boat will be broadsided by a wave and capsized. By the time this decision is made, navigation is down, radios are dead, no port or safe haven is about to materialize. The storm is all that remains: waves, rain, wind. Reading this, I couldn't help but thinking about depression, at least in the pattern I'd encountered it. Manageable at first, I tried to tamp it down, keep stalking forward, but as it strengthened, ambitions faded. Formerly fruitful escapes began causing only more anxiety. I spent nights not sleeping, caught in manic loops, days on the couch, exhausted and frayed. Depression blanketed the world. Depression blanketed the world. It became all I could think about. I turned into the storm. As the storm continues, reality becomes too much to bear. Senses start failing. Seeing is all but impossible, and being caught in the howling wind so long causes temporary hearing loss. As windows smash inwards, cabins fill with water, and the boat dangerously lists, suspense is built by cutting back to a coastal town to show those the sailors left behind. These people are ostensibly safer than their loved ones, but being with them, a viewer doesn't feel safe at all. Instead, the shift in perspective compounds the terror for the sailors with the anxiety of the people who can't do anything to help them. It clarifies the magnitude of potential loss. We're given something to measure it against. Among those on shore, there's often a lucky sailor who decided not to go for one reason or another, maybe a kid's birthday or enough money in the bank to skip one deep sea fishing trip. But are they actually lucky if they have to spend not only the storm, but the rest of their lives wondering, why this trip, why them, and not me? As if clarifying that not only are our lives connected, they are in many ways interchangeable. Some of us are on the shore looking out, others are at sea, hoping desperately for home. Everyone's dreaming on a future without unmanageable disasters in a fathomless distance, wanting nothing more than a world we can count on, where the tide goes in and out real regular and a rogue wave won't leave us treading water until we're brought down by our own weight, where the beach is calm and clean and beautiful, and we stroll hand in hand with our loved ones along that porous border of land and water, stopping occasionally to bend down to pick up a shell yet unbroken, not yet churned to sand, so fine it slips through our fingers. 2030. The effects of climate change have been reversed at the 1 yard line by innovative, cutting-edge, revolutionary technology. Social media is open, welcoming, informative, and transparent. Fair and democratic elections occur regularly around the globe. Wolves have eaten the flesh from my corpse. The wind whistles through bone, bone that belongs to nobody but a span of time, a patch of land. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sam. Wow. I got to sit in that for a while. And I mean, yeah, that's just like one of the joys of this kind of writing and of this mix is that we started in the George Clooney vehicle, The Perfect Storm, which is not a good movie and nobody remembers that it exists. And I did watch it on VHS as a child and I thought it was pretty good. And we end on like such a perfect image in that poem. And like that act of transformation is something that I've always like so deeply connected to in poems that like, I mean, it feels like a magic trick, but it's not a trick. Like something has, it's like alchemy. Like something has fully been alchemized through language and the way that it moves on a page. And I think we should take that seriously. I think we should really, I don't know, understand that something has been changed through the writing and reading aloud of that poem that you just read. And that means a lot to me. And I'm so grateful that I got to like really have that experience again tonight. So thank you so much. That was wonderful. Okay, we're coming up on the end, which is deeply sad, but it's also not the end because you can buy the book. And then what you can do is you can like contact each of the authors that are in the book, and you can pay them to just come on Zoom one-on-one and read their work to you. For the audience members, this is a service that you could just do. You could do it any time. You could just like negotiate with someone like what would it take for you to get on a Zoom with me and just want private concert. I'm available. I'll do it. And I feel like this is something we can get going. Peach Mag presents like just one person readings. I'm just throwing out ideas tonight, and they're all copyright free. I haven't mailed any of them to myself, so they're all like they're public domain. as far as I'm concerned. And also, as far as I'm concerned, our next reader is Sarah Sgro, who's a PhD student in English at the University of Buffalo studying waste. Very good. I love waste. She received her MFA in poetry from the University of Mississippi and is the author of If the Future is a Fetish, and has published work in Cosmonauts Avenue, Boat, The Offing, and other journals. Please welcome Sarah.
Thank you so much, Fargo and Rochelle. Yeah, I'm really grateful to be included in this anthology and to just be a part of this reading tonight. So thank you for inviting me. I'm going to read 3 poems tonight. The first one is a dream poem. I have a lot of dreams about malls or like set in malls. That's like probably my most popular recurring dream. And the narrative thread is always that there's like this store at the top of the mall that I like really want to get to, but I can't reach it. And I feel like that's a sort of like speculative tense. So I'm going to start with that. It's called Our Dreams Are Muscular. Remembering a mouth, but where is the silver pill? The right to be forgotten or to multiply, the metal, emptiness, but is it vacancy or greenery? The room I decorate into a chaste hotel with nothing of my own. I can't walk by my vulgar dailiness like that. A soggy book, I stuff a photograph into the dresser filled with rats who dream prophetically of failing malls. I palm her mouth in sleep where she is always running or unwrapping smelly breakfast sandwiches beside her father on the train. It's common to resist the sputter of a punctual machine, the body bending back in space, the densely punctuated grid. It begs for ownership. Our dreams are muscular with traps between the shoulder blades, belonging to myself or to the rats when we are circling the food court floor with steak sauce on our jeans. I must have drooled for places once. Don't talk to me about the mouth. His spit pooled on the floor until the room decayed. I know the tritest thing about a pile is the metaphor of memory, the right to dim a glowing sign. The mall was built to buckle like a silver shoe, flattened under metal cars. I admit I loved the fragrant stores, bleeding flank on sandwiches, how nothing here belongs to me. But when the train arrives on time to break the glass, there's breakfast everywhere, there's father everywhere. The lights will dim, so I will finally go home to celebrate the failure of my grasp. An empty room can be so green, a grid without a single bleeding mouth. It isn't mine, the memory, the dailiness, the dreaming girl, the trap. The next piece is the one from the anthology. I think even just like reading that poem aloud, I do have like a little bit of a fixation with just like the idea of metaphor and just what that means. So this one is called Filth is Not a Metaphor. Filth is not a metaphor. It's a haunting. It's a dark and stinking car. It's my underwear is stapled to the wall. Yes, this is transactional encounter. It's transaction of the ampersand. My trash can is an archive which remembers every transaction. Brown bags mean exchange, except when I'm displeased, they mean return. A sweatshirt is responsible attire for the winter and a metaphor for I belong to you. To transaction is a bad behavior. Every filth is resurrected. Archive is a haunting, such as corkboard with my shriveled briefs affixed. In the restaurant, I fill my water glass by swiveling behind me. That is very healthy, says a woman reading. What I mean by healthy is convenient. This sounds like a metaphor, but all transactions in this poem happened. I am striving to be literal. My body is a stretched material. Metaphors leave room for ghosts, and I am on the hunt. The sweatshirt smells fresh, but I wanted it gone. The dark and stinking car resolves its filth at Delta Sonic Car Wash. I belong to all my ghosts, but property is not a metaphor, and nor is hunt. My attachment style is a water metaphor. A wave is curling water or an open hand. If I am filth, ideally I will haunt. If I am shriveled by a fixed, it will be brief. A metaphor is a disturbance on the surface of a liquid body breaking on the shore. And the final poem doesn't have a title right now, but I've been working a lot like creatively and academically on just stuff around grieving online, particularly on Facebook. So that's, I guess, a little bit what this poem is about, is like the weirdness of like visiting my father's, Facebook memorial. A timeline is a stem. Like, what's the inside part of flower? Is it pistil? Is it grave? My throat, I want to comb the site of dying with a silver fork. The tile where the memory splays, I sell. The house I never owned, the tepid drool can be a fountain for exchange. The silver coin for dream, the soil for the cloud, whatever clicks inside the pixelated grid, the absent room. Smells of copper, he is mine, he's underground, he's in the sky, but flowers for a grave? I turn my cheek. The gesture is metallic, meaning tepid sheen, the lie of durability. My rock is splintering. I must return to gardens so the gardens grow. My soiled face, my poem breaks into the bedroom where she watches bitters try appraising a projector from the 19th century. If she is selling, I am buying. If I am buying, then the memory is never obsolete. The fountain at the inside of the image splays. And does the drool live in a cloud? So I am always thinking of him when it rains. There is a pixelated timeline where the tile is the driest place. She found him like a rock inside the house. But I will sell the absent room. I am a durable machine without the copper pistol in my throat, the metal cry, the water splinters when I throw my flower in the fountain like a gardened coin. Dying has a sheen, but I promise it will fork. I comb my cheek into a bowl of stems I eat. Thank you. I'm sorry for my cat's little sounds.
I am grateful for your cat's little sounds. Also, yes, like metaphors, I was thinking about so much in putting this together, actually, because I was thinking specifically about like the difference between similes and metaphors, which feels very like fifth grade English, but at the same time, I think a simile lets you off the hook. A simile says like something it's just like something. It's not another thing. But a metaphor is saying, no, this is that. And it's such a like strange linguistic challenge that we've created for ourselves. And so like something that was just so enjoyable about reading all of these poems was just like, what if I just take the metaphors in this poem absolutely literally? Like what world does it create if all of those bridges that the words are making from one thing to another are just real? Like they're just, something is another thing. And I guess it's part of that other, like, about that transformation thing for me. But it's just like, I don't know, it's weird and deeply enjoyable. Also that poem, yeah, just ridiculous, just so good, too good. Well, here we are. It is our last reader for the night, which is awful, frankly. Frankly, it's awful. And I think we should just do another round. So everyone just get ready, like pull up a couple more things to read. And we're just going to start back up at the top. Maybe we can go in reverse order or something, or do like a random number generator, but we're just going to keep it going. And nobody's allowed to leave the Zoom. The Zoom is locked. You can't get out. But I'll just reiterate like how grateful I am to have had the space to both work on curating this anthology and also the space here to celebrate it, and the space to think alongside all of you about, I don't know, what speculative is. It's kind of a silly thing, but at the same time, it's also a silliness that gets us somewhere. It's a silliness that has an edge and possibility that's part of it, which I just, yeah, which I really value. And I'm so grateful for all of the ways that everyone's work that we've heard tonight has reaffirmed that value and that silliness and that joy and that just dancing towards a better world for me. So thank you all so much. And our final reader tonight is Zinnia Smith, whose writing has been published with TSR, the Southampton Review, East and Peach Mag, among others. She was a recipient of Fugue's 2018 Writing Contest in Prose. Her fiction was nominated for Sundress Publications' Best of the Net 2019. She currently lives in Somerville, Massachusetts, and is writing a haunted house novel, which is just excellent. And I cannot wait for that to exist. So please welcome Zinnia.
Thank you so much. And before I get started, I just want to say thank you to Rochelle and Peach Mag and of course Fargo, but also this has just been a really lovely community to read with tonight. So thank you to everyone for that. Because it is indeed aggressively cute, I'm going to start with my piece with Worlds in Which, and then I just have one other brief prose piece to share with you all tonight. So here we go. This is Pool. At first, I was only curious. I went down to the bottom of the pool to see what it was like. It was like the first cry of a baby, a shattering. The blue was wonderful. They sent my brother down first. What are you doing? He asked. I told him, I'm sitting at the bottom of the pool. But why? If you stayed a minute, you'd know, I said. My father came down next. He sat with me. Okay, he said after a couple of minutes, but come up now. Not yet. My brother swam back down. Zinnia, come up now. No, not yet. He swam off. I looked upwards to see the bubbles leave my nose and watch them rise towards the ceiling lights above. Up there, the water was like a shimmying mirror, and in it, the black lane tiles rocked side to side. The far end of the pool was bright, and everything was blue, even the white tiles at the bottom. They didn't necessarily look like a brilliant blue, maybe even a cream color. It was like looking through blue glasses for the nearsighted. Everything further away was bluer. With all the density at the bottom of the pool, it doesn't feel like liquid at all. My ears popped. My father sent down a tuna sandwich. I ate it while I watched the water unmoving. Of course, it had to be moving somewhat, but it's how things look down there, still. The lifeguards never bothered me. Eventually, they had to open the pool to the public again, and I watched the swimmers move up and down the lanes. The lifeguards instructed them not to dive above me. They still used my lane. I wouldn't have expected otherwise. That would have been asking too much. One day, a lifeguard came down with a newspaper and showed it to me. Pool Buddha lives life underwater. I wagged my finger. Terrible headline, I said. Every 10 minutes, a thing that looked like a subway grate erupted a geyser of tiny bubbles. I always hated the backstroke, and I disliked it even more from down there. Butts wiggling back and forth without stride. I counted the swimmers' poles. Breaststroke was my favorite, 6 if the swimmer was strong, upwards 50 if they were not. Yes, I could tell when somebody peed, a detail you learn from living down there. There's a small rush of liquid that's just not the same. Above me, I could hear the water knocking about in the gutter. When I was bored, I counted the chip tiles. I enjoyed most when the divers practiced, the teal diving board off to the right of my head. Their bodies looked like cannon fire. Wow, brilliant, I cheered. I gave them the thumbs up from where I sat. Children on the local swim team would clumsily kick their legs down to see me and wave, and I'd wave back. They swam up again for air and then came back down to make funny faces until their coach yelled at them to get going, and they would like they were supposed to. One time after a terrible race, a small boy without a bathing cap and black hair came down and sat with me. I know, I said. I saw the whole thing. His mother came down to get him, and we all agreed it would get better with time. The nights were quiet. The gutters went silent, dark but not black. I lost track of the minutes or the days. The geyser told me when things began and ended, but this is not the same thing as time. My goggles started fogging up. The ceiling became that other ceiling, the mysterious ceiling above my ceiling of water. I started forgetting things. In my memories, I could still see the objects, a tall and thin gold pole standing vertical and blooming with a sloping luminescent flower. Then it was the people, not the people whom I held dear, but the others. Their names vanished, but sometimes I felt that old achiness in my chest. If I blinked my eyelids, facing towards that glaucomic mist growing near the shallow end, eventually the hurt lessened too. Everything was beautiful. I watched how the light floated in, the corners the bluest, my peripherals saturated. My brother visited again. I get it, he admitted. He no longer asked if I would come home. I shriveled. My fingers pruned so much, they were like the mountainous ranges I once climbed above me in the hard world. The chlorine crystallized on my swimsuit. Even the color became confused. If I could only ever see one color, how could I recognize what it is from what it isn't? It would be nice to say the water saved me, to say the water healed me, but this is not how bodies work. This is not how my body works. So much of my writing is made up of nice and dishonest words, words that deny I live in a disabled body. It is not any more unrealistic or untrue to write about my life spent at the bottom of a pool. I wish I could tell you more, but none of it ever happens the way I say. So that is what my life would be like if I lived at the bottom of a pool. And this is what my life would be like if I lived in California. This piece is a bit experimental and lyrical, so if it sounds like we are jumping place and time, it is because we are. Our plane lands in Sacramento. I make myself think of this as only a coincidence if a person believes in coincidences. I do not believe in anything these days. What Sacramento turns out to be is many long fields of dry grass and gray highways with stoplights that sway. A man stands at the back of his open van. The used dresses he is selling flutter in the wind. A fold-out table of unpacked shirts. Another corner, a man sells almond firewood. We've gained hours and it is not yet dark. Molly and I are forced to cut through a home development called the Hamptons. I turn down Hampton Bays Road. All the homes look the same stucco, the same peach painted exterior, the same planted palm trees in a row. Everything is fantastical, nothing is sane. We buy chains for the car tires. In the shopping plaza, there is a Walgreens, a Starbucks, a nail place, and we buy coffee and Cheez-Its. As we're driving east, the sun finally appears behind this strange smoggy sky, and the light is orange like a clementine. We roll down the windows on the highway, and the air smells of burnt plastic where a milk factory stands like a chrome castle. In the distance are Italian cypress trees, and we drive into Black Hills. What does the map say? The car hits 90 in the desert. This is not a fast speed. The sun is setting while we drive south towards Joshua Tree, and right as the hills and land turn blue, a cool blue, the Killers play from the speakers. This is the music made for this landscape. This is the music one listens to, and this is the land one drives through when a person is trying to forget echoes in their heart. Someone trying to forget someone. At 5,000 feet above us, in the sequoia forest, there is rain. The water line at the lake, the hills of bleached grass, and the clementine trees where round fat fruits lie in the dirt beneath. Learn darkness so dark on the desert road, a dark so the light in the distance is like the tip of a candle. The only thing in the headlights is the road, and the towns are far apart. When a town appears, the eyes have to adjust to the strange sea of stars ahead, pinned into the hills, and I cannot tell how far it is. Emily tells Molly and me stories this night. She tells us about the man who drives out into the desert and lights his car on fire. His suicide attempts fails, and so he must walk across the hot sand back toward town, his body covered in third-degree burns. I do not know what this man did to deserve such a thing to happen, and I do not like to suggest that this is simply the type of life some people must live. Too much chaos in that world. The next morning, Emily tells us about the couple that hikes out far into the park to take LSD. 6 weeks later, their bodies are finally found miles apart. There is no way of knowing for sure what damage was done by the sun, by the coyotes, or by each other. I think he took her out there to kill her, she tells us while she scrambles the eggs. I tell her I have heard this story before. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Zinnia. Here we are. Thank you so much to everyone for being here. And we are now going to begin a work in progress showing of my one-person Fast and Furious musical. It is a romance between zombie Paul Walker and alien hybrid Vin Diesel. And it's entirely sung, by the way. There's no dialogue. So I haven't warmed up, so I'm going to do that on screen, and then we'll just jump right in. And it's only like three and a half hours. Just joking. What I'm going to do instead is turn it over to Rochelle for a few just little closing ditties. And then I will just part from everyone with a wish for you to find a different world tonight, whatever it is, in whatever way it finds you. Just let it be welcome, even if it's a ghost, even if it's like a little ghost who comes to say hello, or your cat sits up and tells you something, a secret that only you will ever know. All of those things are welcome. So thank you all so much for this night. This is so wonderful.
Fargo, thank you so much. I have that funny feeling in my stomach where it's like the end of an event and I just don't want it to be, and I have to say goodbye to people, but I don't want to go. It has been such a pleasure working with you on this first mix. Truly just I don't know, I love the way that your mind works so much, and it has been just you really set the bar. I don't know how else to say it. I'm so excited to see what can come out of this series now that this is the first one launching us into it. Everyone, thank you so much for reading your work tonight. I know I speak on behalf of the whole Peach team when I say it's been a delight and a privilege to publish all of you over the last 5 years. And it's so exciting to see you in this new format next to each other in a way that you maybe wouldn't be otherwise. And so I'm so excited to have the opportunity to publish you again. And thank you for trusting us again with your work. And to all of our guests tonight, thank you for coming and helping us welcome this book into the world. To Jacob, I'm sorry that you're canceled. If anyone here is interested in managing editing, the position is now open. I don't work with canceled people. Just kidding. Love you, Jacob. Please don't quit ever. I need you. All right, y'all. We'll let you go. Appreciate it. Thanks for coming out. And yeah, I love what Fargo said. I hope you all find whatever other worlds, new world, new ways of thinking, new worlds. See you soon.